Let's talk about Donald Trump's tax returns briefly. The situation with Donald Trump's tax returns is escalating to the point where Donald Trump is now effectively begging the Supreme Court to hide his tax returns from investigators. And this is hilarious, but it's also very important in terms of what is quickly becoming a battle really about the separation of powers in the United States and about checks and balances. So I'll catch you up and then we'll get to the news. Investigators have a criminal probe going into Donald Trump and his business's finances. They've tried to obtain Donald Trump's tax returns and his business tax returns for this investigation. Trump tried to block it. Multiple courts have already okayed it. The next step is the Supreme Court, and indeed, Donald Trump has filed for an appeal to the Supreme Court. Now, what's important with the Supreme Court is they're not required to take the case at all. They're not required to review the ruling of the lower court. In this case, it's the second district court. The Supreme Court might decide we're not going to take the case. And in that situation, the lower court ruling would stand, which in this particular situation is a ruling that says Trump has to provide the tax returns to the investigators. Importantly, the Supreme Court currently has two Trump selections, Neil Gorsuch and the absolute lunatic Brett Kavanaugh. The Supreme Court is going to announce in the next few weeks if they will review the case. If they agree to review the case, that review probably will happen before the 2020 election. Now, there is breaking news on this. The Supreme Court did yesterday impose an indefinite delay on the House of Representatives' demand for President Trump's financial records to give them time to figure out how to handle the dispute until they decide what is going to happen with this case, that case, the other case related to Donald Trump's taxes. But this is a major separation of powers case, because if the Supreme Court does take the case and they decide, you know what, Trump does not have to turn over his tax returns, what does that say about our checks and balances, the checks and balances in our system? What does it say about Donald Trump's ability to or not to have to obey prevailing laws? It also relates to this issue of Donald Trump's immunity. Trump's lawyers claim that Donald Trump has immunity, not just from prosecution, but even from investigation. That is a very loose reading of any law that you can find. And a big piece of all of this is going to come down to that. Because remember, we were told, and even Robert Mueller said at the conclusion during his testimony and in the Mueller report, that he did not take a position on whether Donald Trump should be indicted on obstruction of justice, because it is the policy via memo. It has not been legally tested, but it is the policy via memo of the Justice Department not to prosecute a sitting president. That's layer one. We could argue that. We could debate that. There is this further position that Donald Trump's lawyers are trying to argue that Donald Trump's taxes and his business taxes should not be provided to investigators in New York. Why? Because Donald Trump is immune even from investigation. And I have read no serious legal opinion that agrees with that. And then, of course, we go back to the bigger picture. On the merits, anybody working this hard to hide their tax returns has something to hide that is very, very serious. We don't have to go through that once again. I don't believe that Donald Trump's taxes would expose criminality, although arguably double accounting and one set of books for loan purposes and one set of books for tax purposes in New York State is actually against the law. I believe the most likely scenario is that Donald Trump would be exposed as not being as wealthy as he claims to be. I believe that Donald Trump's shady business dealings, which are the subject of much speculation with all sorts of different countries, could be Russia, Saudi Arabia, and others, would potentially be exposed. And it would be both personally embarrassing to Trump and also problematic for him. I don't know that it's a shoo-in that there's actual criminality, or at least definitive criminality, that would be exposed by Trump's tax returns. Although I certainly wouldn't rule it out, and it wouldn't come as a surprise given everything that has gone on. So my questions to you, number one, why do you believe that Donald Trump has been working so hard for so long to prevent the release of his tax returns? Number two, what do you believe will ultimately happen with this case and the release of Trump's taxes? Will the Supreme Court take the case? Let me know what you think. Remember to get on the David Pakman Show newsletter at davidpakman.com on Black Friday. If you are on that newsletter, you will receive an email with a very special discount code useful only on Black Friday for a major membership discount at the David Pakman Show. You need only sign up for our newsletter at davidpakman.com. We will take a quick break. I have an interesting video for you coming up next. We will talk about the schedule for the show for the rest of the week because there is a lot going on, and a very interesting voicemail still to play for you. Today's program brought to you in part by Blinkist.com/Pakman. Blinkist is a great service that I use all the time. What they do is they take thousands of the most popular nonfiction books, including the newest bestsellers. They condense them into 15-minute audiobooks that you can listen to, and you still get the most crucial information and insights from each book. And I've listened to a ton of books on Blinkist. I recently checked out Soccernomics by Simon Cooper. We do have, after all, the World Cup going on recently. We also have been talking about BS Jobs, and there is a great new book, BS Jobs by David Graeber, which I listen to on Blinkist. They're constantly adding new books to the platform. You will never run out of fascinating and critically acclaimed books to enjoy. And our audience can get a 7-day free trial by going to Blinkist.com/Pakman. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm putting a link in the video description. And after the free trial, if you like it, you can continue enjoying thousands of condensed audiobooks for about $5 a month. That's BLINKIST.com/PAKMAN.